you enough. And I just have to add, I know we're just reinforcing the same thing, but when my mom's parents sold the ranch on the Selway, she left a big piece of her heart in there, I'll assure you, a very big piece. But, you know, the move to Lewiston was okay. Like Bruce said, she started that family right away. And Vivian, the oldest, just didn't feel up to traveling today, and I'm sorry, we miss her. The next one, Debbie, lives in Sandpoint in assisted living now, and she is simply not able to travel. So that left just the young'uns, me and Bruce. My earliest memories are camping, usually at Elk Summit. And in the morning, hearing the crackle of the campfire and the smell of the smoke and the manti. And I always remember it being pulled up close to my nose, so I got a good smell of it. But mainly, I remember Mom leaving so early, heading out to go fishing. And it seemed to me then like she was going a long time. And she would come back with her creel full and some fish on a stick. And our job, the kids' job, was keep an eye out for fish and game. Go back to that statue. Another fun thing we always did in the summer involved swimming at Three Devils. And Mom was physically strong, and she was a strong swimmer. And so at Three Devils, you couldn't swim across until Mom said you were cleared to swim across. It was kind of a rite of passage for us. When you were good enough to swim, she swam with us, and of course back, and then maybe the second time. But it was a big deal for us to do that. In Lewiston, in the first house we're in, she had a big yard, of course, and a garden, always a garden, and also a milk cow. And I remember the cow named Tilly, and Debbie and I liked to go to the barn and play, and Tilly didn't like it. Debbie and I thought she was pretty mean. She had horns, and she would lock us in that barn, and we would just have to call, Mommy, Mom. And I'm sure she took her time coming from Tilly. And then in 1961, Vivian remembers a conversation with her mom and Uncle Alan. And Alan said, Jean, you could go to college. You could get a degree. And Vivian wasn't happy. She was going to start third grade, and her mom would not be home all the time. And she liked that because, you know, along with that milk cow came butter. I remember Mom sitting in her rocking chair, reading a book with a jar, making butter. And she made bread, so we had fresh butter and fresh homemade bread to put it on. And Alan kind of took that one away from her because she did go to college, part-time. It took her almost 7 years. Having a family, big garden. My dad was working split shifts at the mill. I don't really know how they did it, because like Jim was saying, she had a lot of other jobs. She was my campfire girl leader. It wasn't Girl Scout. And the trip she took us on, and she was a leader, and so they asked her to take on a leadership role within the Lewiston-Clarkston Campfire Girl Association. She was busy. And then Bruce, in junior high, decided he was going to join a band with some friends. So Mom was very supportive. She bought him a guitar and an amp, and she sewed his outfit. Bruce said you could call it a costume. And by the end of when he quit the band, the pants were a little bit short and involved a jacket. It was pretty involved. It took some effort for her to do that. She also drove their equipment around to different groups in the Lewiston area and to Moscow for a battle of the bands. But they didn't win. Debbie and Mom always enjoyed Shakespeare, just so much together. They would read the plays together, assuming different characters. And one year Debbie decided she wanted to try out for a role in a community play. So Mom drove her there, and Debbie auditioned, and then Mom went ahead and auditioned. And they both got roles. And they were in plays for 2 years. And Bruce was in the orchestra 1 year. The Music Man. So the Carroll family was well represented. And I don't remember which year it was, but her role was she was supposed to go down on one knee as she said her line. And as all of you should know, my mom did things with gusto, everything she did. So she practiced that. She came home with a bruised knee, but apparently delivered her line well. Vivian her passion was volunteering at the Lewiston Hospital and Candy Stripers. So that meant Mom and Dad both being chauffeurs for Vivian for many years. We also moved to a new house during this whole going to college time. And that gave Mom a blank canvas in terms of the yard. So in the front yard, she brought in dirt and made mounds and river rock and made a river. And a neighbor came over one day and said, "What's that?" And she looked at him so proudly and said, "Moose Ridge." She recreated the geography right there in our front yard. It meant a lot to her. And then she taught herself a spelling bee and built a living fence of fruit trees in the backyard. And the Lewiston Tribune did a nice article on that. All this in college, in her sophomore year, she was awarded the highest GPA in class. I think it's fair to say she thrived in Lewiston, but her heart was somewhere else. And they bought 40 acres here on Tahoe. And eventually, when she got a teaching job at Kuski, they moved and then built a log house, specifically to remind her of the house of her youth. So she taught for many years here at the elementary school, but she had so many different interests. She started birding, did bird counts. She was a master gardener and all these lovely, I'm getting ahead of myself, and flower judge. And then she joined the Valley Garden Club, and all of these lovely arrangements were made by members of the Valley Garden Club, Stevie and Becky and Lorraine, Sherilyn and Linda. Thank you. She was also in the Homemakers Club, and I couldn't begin to say all the things they did for the community. The Ridge Runners Fire Department, both she and my dad. She was a voracious reader all her life, just like churning the butter. I remember she read so much. So she joined the club, and when it was her turn to lead the discussion, she was quite serious about it. And she joined a local writing group, which inspired her own book, as Alan was talking about. I Never Felt Poor, Kept in Town. Aptly named, it describes her to a T. The book, just the act of writing the book and then selling it, opened up her world to so many new people. I am so surprised how many people would call and write letters and visit. And I'm looking at one of her dear friends now, Cindy, she wouldn't have known if it weren't for the book. So it made a big difference in her life. And the book itself traveled far. I know it made it to the desk of the Chief of the Forest Service in D.C. Oh, by the way, this vase is from Edith Cole. One of hers used to be Edith Cole's, and she was a flower judge. So there's just a lot of meaning going on all the way around here from those. She was also in Retired Teachers and helped write a book on the one-room schoolhouses in the area. And that one made at least one printing. She also started making wine. I mean, a lot. She had time. She was growing her own grapes and also huckleberry, raspberry, even rutabaga. And I know there are wine stories. Somehow I'm thinking Andy Hazard here. But one group stands out, her fishing buddies. She always had a passion for fly fishing all her life. And so towards the end of her life, she got to teach some of her new friends how to fly fish and just fishing with others. They made trips to Elk Summit, Red River, Paradise Guard Station. And from what I hear, because I never went, but there was a lot of good food, there was a lot of laughter, and even a little bit of fishing. All her life, my mom worked hard. She didn't know how to work any other way. She didn't do things in half measures. Sometimes she worked too hard. Our great uncle, Bruce and I's great uncle, Mom's uncle, Uncle Soini in Ranta in Lewiston had a cherry orchard, and every summer we got cherries from there. And she was up the orchard ladder, leaning out to get that last batch of cherries because she didn't want to move the ladder, and she fell and landed on her heel and broke it. And the doctor told her, well, you'll probably need to use a cane for the rest of your life. She was in her late 30s, and so she walked without a cane. And the backcountry trips that Jim was talking about that she went on, well, they did a lot, not just with girls, and that was memorable because I went on some of those, very memorable. But also she enjoyed going when he would take his guests in on fishing trips. She liked to help. It was her way to get into the mountains and help her brother and be with her brother. But one year, she said she wasn't any help at all. She just couldn't do anything. And not long after that, she discovered she had cancer and had one kidney removed. Well, she recovered from that too and returned to her busy life. Had years left of good times, and then she's driving home from school one day with a good friend, Leanne, and also a teacher. It's snowy roads. She sees a truck coming. There's a curve, and she knew she could beat that truck around that curve. But no. So she ended up with a shattered kneecap in the car wreck. And again, she recovered and back to all of her teaching and gardening and fishing and walking the 40 acres. And that lasted her a long time until the cancer came back. And life got harder. She still pushed herself hard, but she was on medications, and she broke another hip. She broke her hip. So she made what was a very hard decision to sell her place and move to Portland, where I live. Now, once Mom made a decision, she wasn't one to spend time looking in the rearview mirror. She didn't second guess herself on that. So she did well. I mean, she made friends. She joined a writing group, a book club, poker group. She really liked that. She got to see her granddaughters, Hadley and Beth, more often. And I don't know where my great-grands are at right now, but seeing them more often brought the biggest smiles. Then she broke her other hip. And she turned 90 right as COVID hit. And a few months after that, she had a stroke. And again, she made the decision. She was mentally just fine then, and she was very decisive when she decided on hospice. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this, Ellen. I didn't have to call very many people or send out very many emails. Might need a hug. And so many cards and letters came, pictures. It meant a lot to her. It meant a lot to me. It got us both through a lot. I would walk into whether it was hospital or rehab or the care home she was in, and nurses would say, another stack of letters. It was, aides would be reading her letters. Sometimes they were still waiting for me to read them to her. It got us through a lot, and I can never thank everyone who sent cards and letters. I can never thank you enough. We had a lot of discussions about what we wanted to do to honor her, not just her, but her time here. And what we came up with is a donation to the Kuski Library. The librarian here was wonderful. Dina seemed to know her, and I guess the same with Jim, because she would send home a stack of books, and not that Mom liked them all the time. And Dina would hear about it. But she knew to keep that stack large, just like with Jim. So anyone who sent money afterwards, I just want you to know that's where the money went. And I think Mom would really like that. There are too many people to thank personally, but I do need to do just a few. Donna and Paul McConnell. I think hearing Donna's voice on the phone was all Mom needed sometimes. And Paul, I have memories of you working so hard outside, even when it was hot. Thank you. Helen Kettle, she helped her in her yard, but mainly she made so many trips with Mom's beloved old dog Dandy to the vet, trip after trip. Susan Minke, a long time friend, and they did so many things together, and some things I probably don't even know about. Gail Rinshaw. Gail did everything. Chauffeur, so many errands, I don't even know all the errands. Of course, emergency calls, any time of day or night, Gail answered. Gail went there. After Mom broke her hip and got out of the rehab, Gail moved in, 24/7 care. And I know she had to remove a door to be able to access the bathroom. She did everything. And she's the reason Mom was able to stay here in Kuski for as long as she did. It's impossible for me to ever think, Gail, enough. Okay? Jim and Ellen, talking, calls from them were the greatest gift of all. Please know that. Okay, Beth and Caesar, my daughter and son-in-law, are the ones who planned all of this, the feast for us, the food they implemented. Again, I can't thank them enough. I did get 2 requests from other people, so I'm going to try to make this quick because I've been up here too long. A cousin of Mom's, Hal Ritz, he's on the Rinshaw side. His grandma and my mom's grandma, Rose Rinshaw, were sisters. And the first time he came to Kuski, he requested I say this, was in 1940 at Rose's house. Mom was 10 and Hal was 5. And Mom asked if he, quote, had a tune. And he didn't know what she meant. So she said, well, I can't carry a tune in a basket. Can you? So he figured out, can you sing? So he did. And this one is from a friend when we lived in Lakeview, where the girls, our daughters grew up. She said, I met Jean at a high school track meet in Lakeview, Oregon, where Hadley and Beth, Jean's granddaughters, were running. Someone had 2 lawn chairs, so they gave us 2 grannies to sit in. So we sat side by side, getting to know each other. Jean said, Elna tells me you are Finnish. Jean responded, well, I'm half. My mother was a full-blood Finn. So our friend, and Jean replied to her, well, good, I'm half Finn too. So between the 2 of us, we make one good Finn. Okay, I'm truly through now. Thank you all very, very much.